Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be diving into this with you today. We're going to take what is arguably the best-selling yet somehow most misunderstood text in all of human history, and we're going to visually map out its entire structure. We are going on a hunt for a single golden thread running through the whole thing. And my promise to you, by the end of our time together, you're going to be able to hold this massive, complex text in your head just like a beautifully organized map.
Okay, let's get right into it. You probably own a Bible, right? It might be sitting on a shelf somewhere in your house, or maybe there's an app for it on your phone. But let's be real for a second. If someone stopped you on the street and said, hey, what is the book of Habakkuk actually about? Or, what's the point of the book of Numbers? Most people, even lifelong churchgoers, would probably just stare blankly. We carry it around, we quote it, but a lot of us are kind of in the dark about what the overarching point actually is. And honestly, when you look at how this thing was built, that confusion makes perfect sense. Because here's the thing, the Bible isn't actually a single book. It's a vast, sprawling library made up of exactly 66 separate books. I mean, you've got massive historical accounts like Psalms, and then you've got single-page letters like 3 John. That fact alone makes it incredibly intimidating to just pick up and read from cover to cover without a guide. But the sheer chaos of how it was created goes way deeper than just the number of books. These texts were written over a staggering 1,500-year span. Just think about how much our world changes in a single century. Now multiply that by 15. And to add another layer to that complexity, it was written by roughly 40 different people. We are talking about a completely wild mix of authors. Kings, shepherds, fishermen, a doctor, a tax collector, even prisoners sitting on death row. They wrote this across 3 different continents using 3 different languages. And if you look at the historical context, they literally had no way of coordinating with each other. There was no master group chat, no shared Google Doc they were all working from. A lot of them were separated by hundreds of years. But here is the absolute mind-blowing reveal. Despite that ridiculously chaotic process of assembly, when you line up all 66 of these books, the source material presents one continuous narrative. Instead of wandering off in 66 completely random directions, the text actually forms exactly one single unfolding, deliberate story. And it's all centered around one main character.
So how does that even work? Well, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to explore 1. The Impossible Library, 2. Foundation and Broken Kings, 3. Poetry and Prophetic Promises, 4. The Silence Shatters, 5. Letters to the Church, and finally, 6. A Gallery of One Face.
All right, part 1, the Impossible Library. Let's take a look at how we group these books to understand the macro structure, and definitely keep your eyes peeled for that golden thread tying it all together. This really hits the nail on the head regarding the central thesis of the text. Look at the contrast here. On the one hand, you have the chaotic process, a millennium and a half, dozens of wildly different authors, continents apart. By every law of human literature, this should be a totally contradictory pile of random fragments. Yet look at the unified result presented by the books. It's a seamless, unbroken narrative that steadily builds this overarching story of rescue. Moving on to part 2, Foundation and Broken Kings. This is the law and the history, the absolute bedrock upon which the rest of the story is built. The structure here is just fascinating. Step 1 gives us the 5 books of law, stretching from Genesis to Deuteronomy. It starts with creation, the heartbreaking fall of humanity into ruin, and then, right there in the wreckage, it plants the bedrock promise of a coming rescuer. Then step 2 lays out the 12 history books. This part traces a nation's rise, its peak glory, and its incredibly tragic slide into exile. It's basically this repeating, agonizing spiral. The people forget God, they face disaster, they cry out for rescue. Over and over, it builds this deep, desperate ache for a true and righteous king. Which brings us to part 3, Poetry and Prophetic Promises. This section is all about looking to the future. These are the books that capture the rawest depths of the human heart while looking fiercely toward the horizon. Let's walk through this timeline. Right around 1000 BC, we see the 5 poetry books. Think Psalms and Job, putting the absolute deepest human emotions, the joy, the rage, the despair, to music and tears. Then we hit the prophets. The 5 major prophets, like Isaiah, are essentially pleading with the nation and making staggering promises about a new covenant and a suffering servant. Finally, the 12 minor prophets demand justice and point directly to a coming rescuer. Here's the key. Every single prophet on this timeline is leaning forward. They are all waiting, pointing ahead, promising that the story isn't finished.
But then the timeline hits an absolute brick wall. Part 4, The Silent Shatters. Let's look at the space between the testaments.
After the book of Malachi, the Old Testament goes completely quiet. For 400 long years, there is total silence. It is literally a held breath right before the ancient promise explodes into reality. So here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. The Old Testament serves as a massive promise, stretched out over 1,000 years. The New Testament, that is the arrival. The entire library essentially acts as one long, patient answer to the desperate question humanity had been asking since Genesis. Who is going to come and make this broken world right again? In that 400-year silence finally shatters with the 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They tell the exact same arrival story, but from 4 distinct complementary angles. Matthew shows the promised king fulfilling ancient prophecy. Mark gives us this fast, breathless account of an urgent servant. Luke tenderly focuses on the savior of the lost and the broken. And John just soars into eternity, presenting the Son of God so that the reader might believe and truly live. That arrival changes the narrative overnight. Let's look at part 5, Letters to the Church, where this becomes a global movement. Let's see how this momentum builds into the rest of the New Testament. It kicks off with Acts, detailing the absolute explosion of the early church. I mean, it spreads like wildfire across the known earth. Then we get the letters. These aren't abstract essays. They're practical guides written to real people dealing with real problems. We see Paul laying out the step-by-step reality of free grace in Romans, defending hard-won freedom in Galatians, and somehow finding durable joy from a literal prison cell in Philippians. We see James demanding that genuine faith has to show up in our actions. These letters detail how the arrival of Jesus reshapes absolutely everything about human life.
And that wild journey leads us right to the breathtaking conclusion of our explainer. Part 6, A Gallery of One Face, the climax. The final book of the library is Revelation, and within the text, it isn't presented as just a simple ending, it's an unveiling. It's where evil is finally judged and every single tear is wiped away. But here's the most amazing part. The book lands on a picture of a perfectly restored garden city, with God dwelling directly with his people. It perfectly mirrors the exact picture Genesis opened with. The story ends right where it began, but beautifully, completely healed. The grand narrative circle of the entire library finally closes. Now, I want you to imagine walking down a long, echoing hallway lined with 66 portraits. At first glance, they look totally unrelated, right? Different styles, different eras, completely different artists. But as you slow down and really look, you realize every single portrait is of the exact same person, just painted from different angles and in different lighting. The source material strongly suggests the Bible is not just a dusty museum of unrelated historical relics. It's a gallery of one face. Whether you are reading about the Passover lamb in Exodus, the dry bones coming to life in Ezekiel, or the bright conquering king in Revelation, the central claim is that it's a portrait of Jesus on every single page.
And that brings us to the most profound realization presented by this library. According to its own narrative, the story didn't actually end. The text claims that you and I are living right now in the unfinished stretch between the end of Acts and the final pages of Revelation. So, as we wrap up, I'll leave you with this provocative challenge drawn directly from the source material. If this entire, impossible library was built over centuries to lead to one person, where do you see yourself in this ongoing narrative? Thank you so much for exploring this incredible structure with me today. It's been a blast.